Chun-Li is one of the most famous video game characters of all time and the very first female on Street Fighter's roster. She rivals Ryu in popularity and has been part of almost every Street Fighter title as well as almost every Street Fighter crossover or cameo instance since her initial appearance in Street Fighter 2. Chun will be older than ever in Street Fighter 6, though you wouldn't know it by looking, and Capcom will hopefully be taking her story in a new direction than ever before. Let's look at her past to get an idea of where the strongest woman in the world might be headed in the future as we cover the full story of Chun-Li leading up to Street Fighter 6. Chun was a fighter from the very beginning, learning Tai Chi at the age of 5 after seeing a classical Chinese Peking opera as well as a Bruce Lee movie. Her father, Dorai, a Hong Kong police officer, plays a crucial role in Chun's development as he guides her into becoming the powerful and upstanding woman that she is and serves as the source of her main motivation in the story. Strap in for daddy issues. Now, Dorai was known to have legendary legs and taught Chun a bunch of different martial arts with a special focus on kicking techniques, something that we know she very much adopted for her overall fighting style. Dorai mysteriously disappeared during a mission in which he was investigating evil crime organization Shadaloo, and Chun would become an Interpol officer at the age of 18 as she devoted herself to searching for him. This brings us to the events of Chun's first chronological Street Fighter appearance in the Alpha games. Here Chun runs into an old friend of the family named Gen, and, well, of course, she fights him because that's what Street Fighter characters do. But after this friendly bout, Gen proceeds to give Chun some important information about Shadaloo, which leads her to the very first confrontation with Mr. Michael Bison. Here, the strongest woman in the world gets her ass kicked, but instead of killing her, Bison decides to run away and reveals that he's the one that killed her father. She goes back home, gets a promotion for getting her ass kicked, and then cries what she says are her final tears ever. Pretty metal. Alpha 3 sees Chun team up with Charlie Nash and Guile as they join forces to take on Bison again. Chun, Guile, and Charlie infiltrate the evil base where Bison's world-threatening psychodrive machine is located. They set charges and blow it up. Ryu physically defeats Bison, and Chun is ultimately able to shut Shadaloo down until both Shadaloo and Bison come right back in full force for Street Fighter 2. You don't actually learn a lot of canon from the game, but in the Street Fighter Aftermath episodes that came out in 2008, you do learn that Chun, Guile, Ryu, and Ken wind up taking on Bison out in a forest. Chun delivers a massive Kikosho that puts Bison on his back foot, and instead of being taken in, the evil dictator decides to perform a kamikaze explosion via Psycho Power Overhaul. This doesn't kill anybody except for Bison, who comes right back for the ensuing events of Street Fighter 4. So, Chun totally took out Shadaloo, but she somehow missed its weapons division, the Shadaloo Intimidation Network. Sin is still in full force and is now being led by Seth, a Bison replacement body who got all powerful and self-aware and smart for no reason. While investigating, Chun runs into Juri Han, an operative from Sin, and the strongest woman in the world gets her ass kicked by an apparently stronger woman in the world. Anyway, Chun recovers and joins the third World Warrior tournament being put on by Sin. She has a bunch of non-consequential interactions with characters like Gen and Guile and Abel, but eventually gets her rematch with Juri. And this time, despite not having gone through any meaningful change or revelation about herself since the last time they fought, she wins. Then she infiltrates an evil base and discovers important data for shutting down Sin. But Vega activates the base's self-destruct sequence and locks her in. Chun then loses consciousness, but remember those characters from earlier in the story? They show up and rescue the strongest woman in the world from the explosion. Off-screen. Time for Street Fighter V. Initially, we just got Chun's SF5 prologue, which takes place in the future but involves flashbacks to the past. It's basically Pulp Fiction or Memento, just better. Anyway, Chun is taking care of this little girl named Li Fen, whom Chun tells stories about her past as a rookie cop. One of said stories sees the strongest woman in the world losing a fight to Vega and then running into Charlie and Guile. They teach her the lesson not to rush into fights alone, which is foreshadowing for later. 4 months after its launch, Street Fighter V cinematic story, A Shadow Falls, rolled out. Shadow Falls tells the tale of M. Bison's latest plot to take over the world. It involves black moons that can send out EMPs and cause massive blackouts and chaos, and 7 chess pieces that must be brought together in order to stop said moons. Also, if you couldn't tell, Shadaloo has respawned. Some of Bison's engineers are working against their will and sent the 7 aforementioned chess pieces to random Street Fighter good guys around the globe, Chun being one of them. She teams up with Guile and Cammy, and they wind up confronting Bison in New York. Chun rushes in alone, and the strongest woman in the world gets her ass kicked. Bison almost kills her this time, but Cammy saves her. Bison leaves, and that night, Rashid shows up demanding Chun's chess piece, and the strongest woman in the world gets her ass kicked, and he takes it. Now the good guys eventually get on the same page and collect the chess pieces together and head out to infiltrate the evil base. It's here that Chun-Li encounters the young Li Fen for the first time, who is a prodigy hacker working for Shadaloo. Chun offers to rescue her, but Li declines. Chun then shuts down the moons and they all take off, but Bison's second-in-command, Fong, forces Li Fen to initiate the backup plan that will cause all the moons to simply come crashing down onto the planet. So the good guys suit up again and head back to infiltrate the evil base one more time. Chun encounters Bison with Guile and Nash, but remember that lesson we learned about not going in alone in the prologue? Well, Nash goes in alone, and Guile actually stops Chun from helping here. Bison kills Nash, but Chun is able to save Li Fen for real this time, and get this, gets in the first and only fight that she actually wins during this game's story. Rashid stops the Black Moons and Ryu finishes off Bison, saves Chun and Li Fen from an explosion, and then Shadaloo falls and is completely gone and will definitely never ever come back. So in Street Fighter 3, Chun spends her time teaching orphans how to fight. She's adopted Li Fen, but trouble pops up in Paradise when Urien decides to kidnap Li Fen for scientific projects. And so she sets out, finds Urien, beats him, and then she and Li Fen go back to China. Thus far, Capcom has not done all that good by Chun when it comes to the story. She loses a lot in many of the fights she has, and when she does have victories, either via battles or major achievements, they're usually of little consequence and not the result of any meaningful change or progress on the character's part. What's more, she has to get rescued an awful lot, and while good writing can have even your strongest characters rely on helping hands from time to time, Chun has been used as a damsel in distress more than it feels like the strongest woman in the world should. One of her all-time most memorable fights was with Vega in the Street Fighter II animated movie. Vega invades Chun's apartment at an incredibly vulnerable time, when she's just out of the shower. The stakes are high as Vega is a legit creepy guy with a bladed weapon and it feels like he is absolutely ready to murder her. The result is that the stakes are raised and we feel some legit tension in this fight. Their battle is brutal and Chun has to fend for herself in this do or die situation, but it really means something if she can get through it. Guile is on his way to help, but thankfully the writers decided to wrap up the fight before he arrives as Chun dropkicks her foe through a brick wall in a totally badass and satisfying fashion. She's an able part of Team Good Guys instead of just being a character of convenience who's used to make others look strong as they either save or defeat her. She could also benefit from some inner struggle to push against and grow from as a result. There's a little hint of this with that whole bit about Chun being too headstrong and jumping into fights without friends, but it's never really explored in a meaningful way, and Capcom even steps on it directly when they need an excuse to have the Nash-Bison showdown at the end of SF5. Despite being motivated by revenge, Chun really never learns from it or wrestles with it. She just achieves it in a secondary manner as she helps other characters exact it. The good news for Chun is that she's coming back in SF6, and so the writers have another shot at growing her character in the story to match up with the prestige, charisma, and ability her character outside of the story has. How might they do this? Well, we have one possible example. Chun's lawful goodness has been a given in virtually all of her appearances yet. Writers could play with this as she's pulled towards always siding with the law, but what if it became corrupted? The ending of SF5 hints at the idea of a president of the world unifying everyone and then turning into some kind of an unstoppable evil force. So maybe Street Fighter 6 sees this unification happen, and while some of the good guys see through the facade, Chun is blinded to it and sides with the majority under the new rule because of her ideological allegiance to the law. Have a traditionally neutral character like Jury or Sea Viper side with the good guys, but then Chun steps in, thwarts their plan early on and handily defeats this character under a misguided sense of order. Perhaps later in the story we find that Chun has the sole ability to stop or allow the good guy's plan to come to fruition, and it could ultimately be her mentorship and obligations to the young Li Fen that help her realize that she's gone too far and then see her come back from the dark side. Capcom could do one of many things here, but whatever they do, we'd hope to see Chun live up to her title as strongest woman in the world and her legacy as one of fighting games' most iconic figures in the story of Street Fighter 6. I've been John Velociraptor Guerrero for EventHubs. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.